Passwords or password managers are another common interest, so to say. And first of all, I would like to ask you to come to the front rows, because we have a part of the presentation is See My Life with the terminal, so you can probably read better if you just come to the first few rows here. So we try to make it as good as possible, but at least on the back, I guess it's a bit hard to see. All right, gopass, which we want to show you today, is at least what we think a really awesome password manager for teams. And we hope that we can show you a bit today and also convince you that you try it out. So what is gopass? It's a password manager. I've said that already. And I think the kind of special thing is that it's based on two, at least in development, very common tools that you encounter. On one hand, storage and synchronization is done by Git, and all the encryption parts are basically provided by GPG. And another thing that is quite nice, if you want to hack a bit on a nice project, then you use a language that you maybe don't have that often in projects. I mean, you have, but I have Python, and at least Python, And Go is a nice language also to play around with, and that was actually one of my motivations to also fiddle a bit around with that project, actually. And it's for the command line, not only for the really command line gurus, but it's, I think, quite usable even for people who only occasionally have a command line open. But we will show you that later as well. And it's also integrated, at least in the main browsers. So I think everybody of us has to input passwords or credentials very often in your browser, and there's a little helper tool that makes that a bit easier. Not much to say more about me. So I'm working for TeamG, I think, roughly since 5 years, and actually this projector has the same unhealthy color of some other person here on my picture. I don't know why it's showing up here so like that. Anyhow, my interests are also SRE. I'm really interested also in organizational parts of these challenges, and scalable backend infrastructure and cloud automation, infrastructure automation are other interests. And I got actually hooked by the project by trying to find a way to combine a browser with that nice project. So I wrote the browser plugin and also contributed some other small changes or small additions to gopass. And the reason why I was looking for something new was that I was not so happy with my previous solution. I used KeePass, or to be more concrete, KeePass X, which is it's a pretty nice tool. It basically writes and reads from a single database file, and you can store multiple entries. It also allows you to auto-generate passwords and store metadata, so that's all fine. But some things are really hard if you use a tool like that. And for me, one of the two main challenges were that I have that I want to organize my passwords into multiple collections. For example, I have a collection with private passwords, which I'm also fine with having them on my mobile phone, but I also have parts of my password collection which I do not want to have on my mobile phone. I have shared passwords, then I have passwords which are related to my employees, which don't change. I have project-specific passwords, and maybe even in the project we have shared passwords. And that's pretty tedious, because if you really want to separate that cleanly, you have multiple files open at the same time. It's hard to search because you first have to figure out which file you need to use. And it's also a bit hard to manage, because you also, if you store a secret, you need to first figure out in which file you want to store it. If you want to move it, it's quite hard. You have to do a lot of copy and paste. The solution that gopass provides here are mounts, and we will show that later. And the other problem for me was synchronization. So consider the following scenario. So you just have created a new GitHub account and you store your newly created credentials on your laptop. Just in the afternoon, you figure out, okay, I should change my Twitter password, and you do this on your desktop, and then you synchronize and you have a single file, and it's not easy to basically resolve that conflict. And that was something that was a bit annoying for me. And yeah, since gopass is based on Git, merging those kind of things are really easy, because it's very rarely the case that you really modify the same credentials. But typically, as shown here, you, for example, add a secret on one side and modify another one on another side. And that synchronizes or merges very easily using Git. Yeah, and with that, I want to hand over to my co-speaker.
Thanks a lot, Martin. So, yeah, first a few words about myself, that you know who I am and why we built gopass. I'm currently head of infrastructure at JustWatch. JustWatch is a really nice streaming search engine. If you're curious, just download the app, check our website. It's free, it's fun, maybe you'll like it. My focus, or my areas of work usually include things like writing code in Go, or working with Kubernetes in different cloud providers. Yeah, so, yeah, and by incidence, I'm creator and the core maintainer of gopass. But now, why did we build a password manager? So, I mean, you might ask why we decided to do so. There are a lot of password managers out there. Why didn't we just use one which is already there? So please let me explain. But before we continue, a small word of warning. In general, you should really consider if using or especially sharing passwords is the right thing to do. So you should try to avoid sharing passwords, because it's unsafe, it's unsecure, you don't know what others will do with that. So try to use personalized accounts, tightly scoped accounts. There are different things of that, like tokens or whatever is there. So try to avoid passwords. But in our case, we looked and we saw that there are several kinds of credentials we need to share in our organization. For example, there is this, if you use AWS, there's this root account which you need to do certain things which you can only do with this account and not with a personalized account. We have some database role accounts for different kinds of applications, or even though there are things like Let's Encrypt, you still might buy your X509 certificates for your website because you need a wildcard certificate, or your provider doesn't support Let's Encrypt, or for whatever reason. And you might as well store and share this because you don't want to have one person only having access to these private keys. This wouldn't be a good idea. Yeah, and there are several other things. Maybe you have some company credit card which you use to pay your AWS bill or so. So you also might want to share this among a few people and not only having one person having access to that. So yeah, what did we do? We did the thing I learned in university. First, we gathered some requirements. So we asked around the colleagues and checked what actually do we need, or what do we want from a password manager. So first thing is, of course, it needs to be reasonably easy to use. We'll come to that later. It needs to be extensible. Especially for the ops guys in our team, we need to be or want to be able to integrate and automate common workflows, so we don't need to click around some GUI every time we deploy something. Of course, confidentially. I mean, otherwise it's not a password if we'll just publish it. We want to avoid leaks at all costs, and we were really aiming for 100% uptime. And this is defined as whenever our workstations or laptops are available, the password should be available as well. So yeah, we checked a few password managers out there. This is just a selection, a few of them. For example, there are the GUI-based ones like KeePass, KeePassX, and Password Gorilla, and some others. There are the cloud-based ones like 1Password, LastPass, or some others. And there is gopass. We think KeePass, well, it's not always easy to use. Martin elaborated on that. It's not super extensible. I think it's pretty secure as far as I can judge, and yeah, it runs whenever your workstation is running. The cloud-based ones, we didn't really enjoy these for our company secrets. Some people on our teams use them for private stuff, but we ruled them out for company credentials. Yeah, and gopass luckily supports all these use cases, so this is the reason why we built it. Actually, there is some tool that matched these requirements, which is called Pass, which is a password store, which we took the basic file system layout from and the basic terminology from, and rebuilt this in Go. You may ask why. I have a slide on that. The problem with Pass is that it's based directly on GPG, and GPG is pretty hard to use. some people have different opinions on that. It depends a lot on if you're familiar with all these terms. For example, what a web of trust is, what key validity means, what key trust is. These are all things you really need to know if you want to use vanilla pass or use vanilla PGP. Maybe you know, but in my experience, or in our experience, most people don't know or don't care. And more often than not, I myself forgot to import some colleague's key or set the appropriate trust level or the local signing or update the trust DB or whatever. So I added some complex secret and, well, it failed to save it because it couldn't encrypt it, because PGP was complaining. And these were some of the things we tried to avoid or make easier with gopass. So, yeah. Okay, so we have a short demo, so you see how gopass looks in action. Let's just switch to the console. So this is first is the console part. We also have a browser part later on. So first, let's see what we actually have in our password store.
Yeah, and we admit that it's only semi-live, so it's partially scripted, but yeah, that's just to make it easier for us, of course.
So you see, you have a pretty familiar tree layout with some preset accounts. Of course, you can display any of the secrets. So this looks like a secure password. Now let's just generate a new password. That's a pretty essential feature for any password manager. It will ask you any missing information, and then will automatically copy the credential to your clipboard so you can paste it, for example, in your browser, if you don't have the browser extension. Yeah, then we'll look what it generated. We can do fuzzy search, which comes in pretty handy if a large number of passwords. It will display a nice wizard, and you can select any one of those. So, but also we can also work with more complex data. So, for example, let's add the bank account, which has a password, maybe a PIN number or something like this. And yeah. So gopass will automatically check your passwords, which are generated or inserted, and warn you if anything is suspicious, for example, too short, too systematic, too weak, or something like this. You'll see the password is pretty simple. That's why it complained. Yeah, not the best password, but maybe it matches your bank's password requirements. So with a bank account, you usually not only have a password and username, usually you have an account number and validity, maybe a credit card number. So let's add that as well to the same secret in this case. So we add a credit card number.
Oh, whatever.
That doesn't look well lit, but it's okay. Yeah. So we can also add a validity date. Usually need this for credit card payment. You can enter any kind of string there. So yeah, let's see how gopass stores this. It's a simple key value layout. And oh no, sorry, I'm too quick. This is only a single entry, and now we show you the full secret where you can see the key value store layout. So we have the password, and then we have the other structured entries in this secret. And maybe we want to change this password. It doesn't look really secure, so we can just edit the whole secret, open up a familiar text editor. You don't have to use Vim, of course. You can use any editor you want. It respects the usual environment variables.
Now my password is too systematic, not too short anymore.
Yeah, so it will warn you and try to be a file. So yeah, then let's switch to slides, please. Okay, now after this short demo, let me give you a little higher level overview of the features and the use cases for gopass. So as you saw, of course, it can generate and store passwords, which are encrypted with GPG. This can be as secure or as insecure as you want, depending on how you set up your GPG. gopass tries to make everything as easy as possible, but of course there is some inherent complexity. For example, if you want to use it with a YubiKey or with some smart card, you can do that. Everything the GPG supports, but it may be a little more complex. It depends on your setup. It helps you manage access, so it has a list of which keys should be able to decrypt which secrets, or which secrets should be encrypted for which recipients. it supports multiple teams and different use cases. That means you can have one or more stores for private use, and for each team, whatever team means in your case, can be 1 to any number of persons, which will be able to decrypt these teams' credentials. As you saw, it has integrated quality assessment like a password strength checker and a leak checker. Yeah, and it's written in Go, which I especially like. So let's talk real quick about Go. So I don't know, you may not be familiar with Go, or maybe you are. Let's just highlight a few things why I think that Go is a really awesome programming language. So first of all, it's a programming language created primarily for systems and server programming at Google by 3 pretty well-known guys who worked at, I think, at B&C before, at the Unix Bell Labs. So they have a lot of experience. One of them created UTF-8, so all good things that went into Go. The language itself is compiled and iterative, which means, in simple terms, it has a pretty fast execution and it has intuitive concepts, at least if you're coming from C or Java maybe. And it has strong static typing. That means most checks can and will be done during compile time and not during runtime with a lot of the dynamic languages. So it gives you a lot of safety. Once your program compiles, it usually runs pretty well. Not everything, but mostly. So why should you use Go? Or why are we using Go? For information, JustWatch is fully powered by Go in the backend, so we use it for everything in the backend. Go is pragmatic, practical, and clean. So as I said, it has type safety, has awesome and easy concurrency concepts, super easy deployment due to static binaries, or mostly static binaries. The language itself is pretty easy to learn. It's a small language with great tooling and pretty simple error handling. And I think, personally, it's pretty much fun. Yeah, due to fast compile times, it has a pretty comprehensive standard library, an awesome third-party library ecosystem, and a very amazing community, very nice and friendly community. So yeah, we have an example why we think Go has pretty great accessibility. Martin did his actual first Go contribution to gopass, and it wasn't actually small. Maybe you can explain a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I basically just wrote from scratch this API that integrates, that basically builds the API towards the browser, and it's roughly 400 lines of code. So that was my first, more or less, production Go code. And I just, first of all, it was really easy to read the available code. Despite never having looked in detail into gopass, it was very easy to find out how the concepts were. And also then when Dominik looked a bit more in detail in my code, it was very only minor things. Like I forgot to run some standard tools, which typically sort the imports, and I typically always add blank lines. So that was also one of the things, and some smaller things. And I think that's really a special thing on Go, on Go projects in particular, that you don't need to learn much to actually being able to contribute to a project, because the code is so easy to read. There are not many different idiomatic ways on how to code. That's, for example, the case for Python. In Go, there's typically one pretty straightforward way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it got merged pretty fast. So it was really nice. I only learned that this was his first Go code contribution when we prepared the talk, actually. So I didn't suspect anything. It was really good. So yeah, how is using gopass like, or what are the use cases? I teased a little bit on this. So first of all, for me, myself, I wanted it to be a personal password store which has great usability. So the basic use case, of course, is as a personal password store. The secrets get encrypted with GPG. We have the passphrase of your GPG key and maybe a second factor like a smart card protecting these secrets. And we provide a password history by using Git. Yeah, that's a simple use case. We can quickly show how this feels like in a quick demo. So we have this account, and I think then we're going to change the password. Notice that it will only change the password, not the rest of the secret. So we will not override, for example, the credit card number. the new password is copied automatically, and then you should see a change password. Of course, you need to update your account at your bank as well. So
yeah, but maybe you forgot that. I need the old password.
Yeah, so we forgot the password, and oops, we can't enter the old password. So in this case, we use the hard way. We just use Git, and yeah, just roll back to the old version. gopass by default generates some quite descriptive commit messages automatically under the hood. So we can just reset to an older revision, and now we should get our old password back. You see, we are back one commit, and then we should be able to retrieve the old secret. So yeah, and now you can probably change it at your bank. So the next use case, that's let's say the company use case. That's a shared password store. We want to be able to manage password and recipients for multiple teams. We realized this by having a single Git repository per team. Each team in our case has at least one Git repository, and in each repository there's a list of recipients which should be able to decrypt these secrets, and then you can mount them like you used to maybe on a Unix system. You can mount different directories into a single flat tree, and yeah, you can store these mounts via a handy sync command, which will push and pull all changes to the different Git repos you might have. For example, at work, I think I have half a dozen of password stores mounted into one namespace. And we also have a short demo on that. So let's see. We should have multiple mounts here. Oh no, not yet.
No
so
yet,
we need to clone one. So this is just a local password store, and then we clone one from GitHub in this case. Of course, it can be any Git source. gopass tries to be nice and probably attribute your commits and also sign your commits for the time being. So it will ask you for any missing information if there is any. Then we can see which mounts are there. We should see the root store and one additional store which we just mounted.
I hope it's visible, yeah.
gopass tries to highlight these special entries. And we see there are some new entries there which are basically mounted in this place. You see the local path behind the name of the mount, and you can just access them like any other password, as long as you have gotten access before. So in this case, this mount was pre-set up to include our GPG key. Otherwise, you would get a decrypt error and wouldn't be able to decrypt this password. Then you would have to ask the maintainer of this store to add you to the list of recipients, or maybe a team manager or something. Yeah, of course, we can also create passwords in there. And you'll see there's a new password, and then we can sync it.
No, we first show the recipients.
We first show the recipients, which is in this case Martin and me. Doesn't make too much sense of both of us here, but you can imagine that you can add a different set of contributors there. So, for example, we want to share with this guy we never met, or at least I never met. gopass will usually ask you for permission to do certain critical things, like, for example, adding a recipient. Then it will re-encrypt all the existing secrets. So this guy also can decrypt these passwords. And yeah, we can push changes to remote, and as soon as he gets access to this remote somehow, maybe we add him to some GitHub organization, then he can also access these credentials.
Just remove the mount again. Yeah. So now it's still here then.
And now we're back to our personal password store. Thanks. Okay, let me show you some integration we're using gopass for, or gopass with. As I said, at JustWatch we're using Go a lot, and also Kubernetes. And we weren't happy with storing our passwords, for example, in Git or in plain files lying around somewhere. So we looked for a way, and luckily Kubernetes got support for so-called role-based access control and secrets. So as soon as those features got available, we started to use them. So now we create and store our secrets in gopass, and then we use some bash gluing to inject them into Kubernetes secrets, and these secrets are access controlled by role-based access control, so only certain SREs and of course the containers who need them can access these secrets. This isn't super elegant, but it gets the job done until we implement a more mature solution, for example Vault or something like this. Yeah, but I think it's a pretty good, good solution for the time being. So yeah. And for this, I want to hand over to Martin again.
Yeah, that's another really small example. So Summon is a nifty tool that you can use to inject environment variables into a process, in particular secrets. So it's very useful for secrets. So for example, you have an application that you run with certain secret set. Summon can basically read out those secrets from one of the providers and pass them as environment variables to your process. And the nice thing is that you basically can just plug different providers into that chain, so that your delivery process always looks the same, and you can exchange, for example, for production and your local development environment, just the provider. And I just want to show how easy it is, for example, to use, that's basically the architecture that I just explained here. So yeah, the provider's pluggable. Summon calls the process with a correct environment set. Yeah, and the only thing that you need to do is to link gopass to the Summon provider directory, because it basically, by default, if you specify the secret name, basically just returns the secret. And with things like that, you can then just specify the provider and use that to call a tool, for example, AWS, to list buckets. So in the background, it sets the AWS access key ID and the secret access key ID, and makes it available from your local gopass. So that's still a bit long. So if you just alias this part here until AWS. Oh yes, so now on the bottom here, so you alias this one here. Then you can just, for example, AWS TNG. You have an AWS CLI that basically always uses your my TNG credentials, and I can do the same for the customer and for different accounts that I have without manually switching or so. All right. The other thing is that we all probably have to do very often to log into some third-party services via the browser, and that's the hard part of the live demo, because it's really live. Okay. Yeah, so as an example, I just try to sign into GitHub. Let's see if this works out. And all the functionality is in this little icon here. That's basically from the browser extension. And so we sign in. And the only thing that we need to do is opening it. And yeah, we have two users. This one is the one that we created, and this one was the one who was already there. So let's use that one, and you see we're already logged in. Another thing that we can do here is, for example, also searching for credentials. So let's say we haven't named it properly, or we need a special credential here, then we can just search for it. Or we can also create a new one. So let's say we want to create a new BTD11 demo user. All right, and sign out. I need an email address, Martin. And the password we can just also copy to the clipboard, which is in a mask like this, makes it a bit easier. Create an account. So now we have created the account. So if we sign settings, no, sign out, and sign in again, then we can also just use our newly created credentials. All right. Yeah, so not many features, but I think the most important ones are hopefully implemented, the most time-saving ones. Yes. Okay, so I want to just shortly talk about basically the principles behind this browser plugin. So the design principle is are basically three main ones. One is browser portability. So we don't want to put in much effort into porting this to different browsers. So it's a web extension, so it works with all browsers that support web extensions. So it basically works on Chrome, Chromium, not Safari, Firefox, Edge, and Opera. So those are the browsers that are in principle supported since they implement the web extension API. So another thing is that, and that's actually how we came into contact, I wanted to build in the API directly into gopass so that the API stays stable even if gopass, for example, changes internal, so that it's automatically tested with gopass. And also more complex logic, for example, to prevent trickery with the URL. So these parts are also implemented in Go, where it's also easier to test and more robust. And the code should be fully reviewable. So if you download the extension, you can compare the extension code with the code posted on GitHub and see that there are no backdoors and things like that in it. And filling in credentials should be always, or should always require at least one user interaction. Some browsers don't do that, and in the past, this leaked information, for example, like email address and things like that. So the main part is the browser plugin shown here in the middle, and it needs basically two directions to communicate. On the right side is the actual the gopass binary that provides all the functionality that gopass provides, and what it needs to do to insert the credentials, it needs to modify the website DOM. So let's first look at that part here. So first of all, the permission to access gopass is limited with a so-called app manifest. The app manifest basically tells the browser. So I have an app here. The app is gopass. You can call this binary, and only a certain extension is allowed to call this binary. So this basically limits the scope that not other extensions or even websites can access gopass. And the messaging between those two parts is really simple. It's basically JSON messages with a little bit of addition. Oh yeah, the messages are too large here for this slide. All right. So the other part here is the communication of for example, the credentials to the DOM. And this looks like displayed here. So on the right side, there are the different parts. For example, this pop-up, which is shown on the bottom right here, or there's a settings page where you can just modify some things. And messaging always takes place from the pop-up basically to the content script. The content script has direct access to the browser DOM, but it's completely isolated from scripts that are running in the website context. So I think Chrome calls it isolated worlds in their documentation. So that's basically the main separation between those two parts. Yeah, and with the outlook, I want to hand over to you again.
Thanks. So now you should have a pretty good impression of what gopass looks like, how the browser bridge works. And we want to show a little bit of outlook what we wish for gopass or what we plan to do. The first thing is we would like to do away with external dependencies. You see, the main pain point in maintaining gopass, or the most time-consuming task, is dealing with users having difficulties with GPG. So GPG is really a big problem for many people. There are so many different configurations, so many versions out there. It's pretty hard to script. For some GPG subcommands, there is machine-readable output. For others, there isn't. The format isn't always the same. I think in the wild, I've seen GPG from 1.4 to 2.1 or 2.2, I'm not sure. There are so many configurations. Some people use smart cards, some people use YubiKeys or other backends. So we would really love to see this go away eventually. Of course, we can't really get rid of PGP because right now I think it's the most secure solution. don't trust the foot around things like eFail. I think PGP or GPG is still super secure. A lot of people trust it, but integrating is a lot of pain. So we're still looking for something that is a more, better integrated. Maybe we eventually will find a proper pure Go implementation. There is one, but it only supports GPG until 2.0 or 1.5 or so. So we can't support newer setups. That's a showstopper for us. And these external dependencies make error handling harder, so we want to get rid of that. Also, we would like to get rid of the external Git dependency. There are Git implementations in Go, but they're missing some crucial features, so maybe with time we can get rid of those, but for now we'll have to deal with that. We would really like to support multiple backends and be it only for evaluating different implementations. The next release will support this. There is still the mature GPG implementation. There will be the version limited support for the pure Go PGP implementation, which only works with older PGP setups. And there will be a libsodium NACL based pure Go backend for experimental use, but this is of course not compatible with PGP setups. And as for the storage, we will support, of course, the file system as we did before, and there will also be console and Vault support, so you can integrate gopass directly with console or Vault if you want to. We want to work a little bit on the recipient integrity. We are still not 100% happy how the list of recipients is protected, and we want to improve on that to have a proper trust on first use workflow like you have with certain crypto messengers, or for example, a project like AutoCrypt for PGP email. We always want to improve on the UX, of course. There will be this new gopass history command, which saves you from typing git commands into your shell, so you can just use gopass to access all the versions of your passwords. And there will be things like per secret recipient editing, so you can flexibly decide which recipient should be able to access a given one's secret. And there will be much improved auditing feature. There is this Have I Been Pawned website by Troy Hunt, which is pretty amazing. And he recently released an API, and this will also be supported in the next release. So we want to show you a quick demo of how this audit features work.
Yeah. So the first thing is clear. That's basically the complete offline feature, just static checks. So it just decrypts the 10 secrets, and all are pretty bad. Some are too short, some are too systematic. We even have a shared one between Hotmail and Twitter. So this is really nice if you have a large password collection and try to find flaws or want to audit your own passwords. And the thing that's currently only in the development version is checking against the API, as Dominik mentioned. And so for this, the passwords need to be hashed, and a part of the hash needs to be sent to an API to check basically if it has been found in recent or not so recent breaches. And also here, I mean, our common ones are of course there, but I think one special thing I want to show is, so this LinkedIn password here that I have set here is was not found by the static analysis. And if we now show the secret, then it's a bit more complex. But apparently some guys use this as their password, so it's definitely not secure anymore. And I think it's really a nice way to find out if some of your many own passwords that you're using are revealed and should not be used anymore. All right.
So. There it is.
Just take some time. One nice thing is that gopass is in trial phase of ThoughtWorks technology radar. So I think that's also part of the message. Try it out.
Yes, please try it out yourself if you like. Please explore gopass. If you're interested, use it, report any bugs, suggest features, and if you like, start hacking the code. I promise you it's fun, and we always try to be really nice. Thanks a lot.
All right. Yeah, and of course not the backups, we take questions.
So we still have time for questions. We just don't have a second mic because of our two
I'll just
speakers,
repeat
so
it.
the speakers might probably repeat the questions so that we have them on the video. So,
is an Android app planned?
So so I think I'm the mobile user. So what you can do is you can use. Thanks. The question was, is there an Android app planned? Since gopass uses the same layout as Pass does, there are apps that basically are that can show, or I'm not sure about modifying, but at least can show Pass stores. So I personally use Pass for iOS, for example, for the iPhone, and the only limitation is that you are basically limited to one store, as you have to do with Pass, basically. So, and I think there's also for Android there are definitely also Pass compatible apps, and since the store layout is the same, they should also work with gopass.
Yeah, and also I can assure you I won't be working on any mobile app anytime soon, but we would be really happy to have contributions to that.
So yeah, well, yeah.
I have a question. In your overview, you showed us that you consider LastPass not confidentially conserving. Some problem with confidentiality with LastPass, and maybe you can comment on that, because LastPass from the idea is pretty similar to what you're doing.
Actually,
Yes, so the question
please.
was, is LastPass basically, or what makes us basically put the red cross here for the confidentiality of LastPass? So since LastPass also to some extent uses the same feature. Can you comment on that?
Not too much. Actually, I did much of the coding on gopass, but the requirements gathering and all the input was pretty much all for my colleagues. So I personally didn't use LastPass at all. Previously, I used Pass, and I wasn't happy with the UI, and some of my colleagues weren't happy with the other solutions they were using, so we decided together to start working on gopass. But I didn't use it myself, so I can't really comment on that, sorry.
So it's... it's definitely closed source. And I mean, one of the things that, I mean, depending on your paranoia level, you can be targeted, of course, and passwords of specific persons can in principle be revealed. So if this is a problem for you, I mean, probably not everyone is targeted here, but this can be, of course, a no-go for a cloud-hosted solution.
That's true. Just an example, we don't store our passwords on GitHub. So it's just an example. It's just an example for the demo. You can do that if you trust GPG. We don't store anything in GitHub.
But how do you then sync your password? I mean, if you have a team and you want to have a shared password,
for example, we have a private private Git repos on GitLab or something internally hosted, which isn't accessible to the outside. That's our case. It works for us pretty well.
Yeah, more questions? Over here. It's true, yeah. Yes, so I repeat the question. So the question was, are there any migration tools, for example, to migrate from KeePass X to gopass or Pass? So what I did was I used a tool that was designed to migrate passwords from KeePass X CSV export. Basically, you can export it as a CSV file, and it's a Python script that basically converts it to a Pass-compatible layout. And since the Pass layout is again the same as gopass layout, it was very easy to transfer that. There were some minor things that I had to fix. Since gopass uses YAML, I had to enter some quotations, but since I did not use metadata that extensively with KeePass before, it was not much of a change. I think it took me like 20 minutes or so in total to go through my 120 credentials or so to make sure that they are all in the right format.
so far there haven't been, I can't remember any issues on GitHub where people ask for migrating to gopass. I think mostly people are either using the tools that exist for pass, which are compatible with gopass, or they don't have any issues with that. Have there been any issues? We would have probably worked on that, but there was none so far. So.
It's actually also one of the ideas. I just talked yesterday with Dominik about it. It would also make sense to integrate basically a storage backend that makes it compatible, for example, to a KeyPass file that you can mount to a KeyPass file. So let's assume that your colleagues all want to use KeyPass and have agreed on using a shared KeyPass file. It would be nice to mount that into gopass so that you can easily access it from the command line as you can access all your other passwords. And the same is also true for password managers, which at least open up their specification how they store the passwords. So yeah. All right, I think time's up more or less. Or there's one more question maybe here, yeah?
So if I understood correctly, if you add a recipient to a password or to some secret, then you're encrypting the password for all recipients again.
Yes.
So in effect, you're also, if you want to sync, you're also rewriting Git history, or is it like...
So the question was, just repeat. Yes. The question was, if a recipient is added to a store, then all passwords are encrypted again with a new recipient set. And the question was if the Git revision history is basically reset.
No, the Git revision history is not reset. Why would you do that? Or why are you asking for that? Okay.
Okay, if I change like the contents of the whatever backing file where the password is stored encrypted, so I need to commit that.
Okay, that's a pretty good question actually. So when you add a new recipient, then the passwords are re-encrypted and a new commit is made for all affected secrets. So I don't see any issues with that. But you're pretty right that if you remove a recipient, you might want to think about rewriting your history, but actually this is something I wouldn't recommend because it will break the common Git workflow. So what we recommend, and would also gopass outputs if you remove a recipient, that you should change all your secrets which these recipients had access to, because of course you can always restore them from the history. Or even if you rewrite the history, anyone who has an older copy of this Git repo can still restore it. So we highly recommend to rotate or change your passwords when you remove a recipient. I don't see any other way with shared credentials, actually.
I also have a question on this multi-team setup. Do you have any experience on how big of a team this is practical? I mean, re-encrypting for a large number might take some time.
Yes, so I think I hope everybody understood the question. Was it okay like that? No, then I repeat it again. So the question was when you have a certain team size, at what team size basically is it not feasible anymore to re-encrypt, for example, the secrets if a team member leaves or actually not is added, doesn't leave. So we haven't really benchmarked it. I mean from the re-encryption was live, so it was maybe like 10 passwords in 3 seconds or so. So there's definitely a limitation on that. So I think if you have 100 recipients with 100 passwords, that will take quite some time. On the other hand, if you share a password with 100 people, maybe you should just print it out and put it on the door or somewhere like that, because honestly, I mean, I think that's too many people to share passwords with. So for a team size with 20 or so, I think for a small, not too large number of passwords that you typically have in such a shared store, it should, on a modern hardware, should not take too long.
But it's a good question. For example, I think I see 2 limitations there. One is Git. I don't see a problem there. Look at, for example, the Kubernetes project or the Linux kernel project. I don't see any limitations there, either with number of files or number of people. The other thing, as you already said, is re-encrypting. This may take a while. That depends a little on your GPG version. I don't really remember which GPG version was faster, either 1.5 or 2.2, but one was pretty much slower than the other. I'm not sure if this is intentional by PGP or if this is a side effect, I'm not sure, but it might take a while. At work we have a few hundred secrets in the different stores I have access to, and re-encrypting all of them or checking all of them, decrypting to check them, takes quite a while. So actually GPG limits us a little bit there, but there is no limitation which is due to gopass. I mean, it has to call GPG to decrypt the secrets, but the Go code is basically idling around. So you see, GPG is like something we need to deal with quite often, so it's a little bit of an annoyance sometimes, but it's secure.
We assume at least.
Yeah, we hope so.
Over there.
Okay. One question about it, because you mentioned AWS, so I assume you have an understanding of AWS. When you create an AWS root account, you are asked for a very strong password, of course, but there is also strong recommendation on the second factor, the multi-factor authentication. Is there any reasonable support for that part? Because I'm taking the QR code and I have it stored on my handy and is there anything which I can get support for?
Yes. So the question was about OTP, right? OTP support or two-factor authentication support in gopass. Yes, there is TOTP and HOTP, I think, support in gopass. We don't really recommend storing the second factor along with the first factor, but if you want, you can do it. So it's supported. It supports a lot of different OTP URL styles. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend it actually. So it's up to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So one of the criticisms that I read about PASS, I guess it applies also to gopass, is that once you get hold of the Git repository, it automatically will know, even without knowing the BTD secret, what kind of secrets are stored, because it's typically called the file. You call the file according to the Yes. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so the question was, one of the criticisms on PASS and gopass is that basically the layout of your secrets is not encrypted. So this is in principle visible if you have access to the repository. So one additional layer, for example, you really want to host your secrets on GitHub and on a public repo because you want to save some money. What you can do is you can, in principle, plug into that and manually, for example, add Git crypt as an additional layer, which would completely hide basically the file system layout. But it's definitely not something that is built into gopass itself. So if you need also confidentiality about which secrets you have stored in your repository, then you may be fine with just not making it public. That's one option, or you need to take additional measures.
Yeah, for me, this whole project has different phases. The first phase was to get PASS compatibility so we could replace it. The second phase was working on the UX, which is pretty nice already. You can always improve on that, but it's pretty nice. It works pretty well for myself, for the team, and also for my wife. And the third phase will be exploring different backends. I already teased on that. You can use different backends. We are experimenting with that. I share your concerns. We wanna introduce different backends, explore, gather feedback on them. But the primary backend will, for a long time, will stay PASS compatible. But you will be able to replace them and use, for example, a fully encrypted container if you want to. That's planned, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if there are no more questions, I think
all right.
we thank Dominik and Martin.
Mm-hmm.